Doctor, at least 9 states have already banned mask mandates in their schools. Broadly, are you concerned the new CDC mask guidelines will have no impact?
Well, look, I think in terms of mandating that or recommending that people who are vaccinated need to wear masks again, I think what could be more valuable to people who are vaccinated is just practical guidance on what it means to be vaccinated and what their individual risk is. Being vaccinated substantially reduces people's risk that they have a bad outcome, that they'll be hospitalized, or have a severe case of COVID. But it doesn't make you impervious to infection. What we're seeing with the Delta variant is it's so highly contagious. There are some breakthrough cases where people who are vaccinated are developing mild or asymptomatic infections and probably have the ability to pass on that infection. So if you're vaccinated and you become symptomatic, don't assume that you don't have COVID. And if you're caring for young children or people who could be at risk, you should get yourself checked out and maybe consider wearing a mask when you're around people who are at risk. So I think if we gave practical guidance to people who are vaccinated, that would probably be more valuable than trying to re-implement a mandate that people who are vaccinated wear masks.
That sneeze was not COVID, for the record. Doctor, you said you think we're further along with this Delta variant wave than we realized. If you could elaborate, I'd appreciate it. And given that, are we overdoing this, given that you've said you think we're close to done?
Well, look, I think we're in the thick of it right now, but I think we're not picking up a lot of infections. There's probably a lot of infections happening right now. Our ascertainment rate, meaning the number of infections that we're actually diagnosing, probably is around 1 in 10. During the height of the epidemic in the winter, when we had very good testing in place, we were picking up probably 1 in 3 or 1 in 4 infections. Right now, a lot of people aren't going out and seeking testing, and when they do seek testing, they do it at home with antigen-based tests like the Binax. Those results don't necessarily get reported. So if you're vaccinated and you develop a mild cold, you don't think you have COVID, so you're not going out and getting tested. And a lot of the infections, since we vaccinate a lot of the more vulnerable population, older individuals who are more likely to become symptomatic, a lot of the infection right now is happening among a younger cohort who are less likely to develop very severe symptoms, so they're less likely to think that they have COVID and seek out testing. The people generally who are getting tested are those who get very sick or those who develop some telltale symptoms of COVID, like loss of taste or smell. But that's probably just a small fraction of the overall infection. So I think the amount of infection that we have taking place in this country is a lot higher, and maybe we're closer to the peak, particularly in some of the southern states. When you look at the South, you look at states like Arkansas, Missouri, Louisiana, the epidemic is still expanding in those states, but the rate of expansion is slowing, and that's a sign that they may be reaching a peak in those states.
So you think we may be on the downslope from this when?
Probably in 2 or 3 weeks. I think that we were probably about 3 weeks behind the UK. The UK clearly is on a downslope. They've seen an uptick in the last day, but they've seen a sustained trend over the last week of declining cases. I would expect some of the southern states that really were the epicenter of this epidemic to start rolling over in the next 2 or 3 weeks. Now, the problem is that this is a big country, and we're going to see the epidemic sweep across the country in different portions at different times. And so the Northeast and northern states will start to see more Delta spread as the South comes out of this. With the UK, it really revolves around what happens in London. Here in this country, it's going to be much more regionalized. Now, I don't expect the density of the spread of Delta in states like New York or Michigan to be what it was in the South. We have more vaccine coverage up there. We've had more prior infection. But you will see an uptick in cases, even in states where there's a lot of vaccine coverage, probably just not as severe.
Shepard Smith here. Thanks for watching CNBC on YouTube.